All right. Good morning what is it? Thursday, the 19th of December. The year is ending fast. I hope you are ready to be productive this morning. I have made tea and I have a slight cold, so we'll see how all of that, goes together. At least the audio seems to work, so that's a good thing, I guess. And yeah, I'll do the usual things today. I'll try to get through messages, comments, and all the other stuff in the first sprint, and then write something in the next one. Yeah, hello, Britain. I mean, I feel like in December it's normal to have like some sort of cold or whatever. I mean, it's winter out here. It's raining, which is typical for Christmas in Germany these days. It's no snow. It's usually, I don't know, relatively cold and rainy. Yeah. Also, I mean, traveling, going to the gym and going back from the gym and standing in bus stops in the rain. It's all really helpful if you want to get sick, I guess. Yeah. How are you doing beside your congestion? I hope you're good. I hope you managed to get some reading done now that you're back in familiar territory. I did, in fact, finish my reread of The Final Empire yesterday, and I'm, somewhere in the first half of The Well of Ascension, which is not good. Not very good. But, it is what it is, and I hope I can, you know, focus on making videos again today. I was way too tired yesterday, too exhausted mentally, and I think that's like one of those things that oh, nice. That sounds good. So I assume you're getting closer to the end of each of those because I don't, although Deadless is relatively long. I don't think Absolution is that long, however, but I'm not quite sure. What I learned yesterday is apparently Travis Beldray is writing the next one of his cozy books. Has finished his first draft, or he was joking. I'm never quite sure because he gave the title as Brigands and Bread Knives, and I'm like, are you making a joke here, or is this just the next book? Because what annoys me so much about these trends is like the branding. Like I haven't read Legends and Lattes, but I'm willing to concede that it probably was a good book because a lot of people loved it. And so obviously the next one was bookshops and bone dust, and then suddenly you have like an entire deluge of other supposedly cozy books about usually coffee shops and shit like that, and all of them try to make have funny titles that have like some form of alliteration in it, and I'm like, guys, I know that's how marketing works, but could you be slightly less obvious? Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Already plans what you're going to read after you've read Deadless and Absolution? I mean, obviously, there's a second part to Deadless that I always keep forgetting the title of, but are you going to move on straight to that one, or are you taking a break and reading something else for a moment? Now, I really want to get the Mormonism video out before the end of the year, and I wanted to record stuff yesterday, but my brain was just too foggy. Probably partly exhaustion, but also, I On my way back from the gym, I got hit by a car, which was not exactly how I imagined the day to go. But I mean, I was very lucky. It was just like a slight graze, but still was a bit of a shock. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. First of all, I mean, it's like 1 week and a bit once you're done with those books, I guess. And what with Christmas celebrations, I don't know how much your family will celebrate, but like usually, there's like family stuff and probably very little time to focus on books anyway. So could be that makes a lot of sense. You can, do other stuff that is fun, whatever those things may be. I mean, I'm not much of a fun person to begin with, so. And yeah, so that's how I did not record anything yesterday, which annoys me because if I look at how much time I have to finish the video, if I want to get it out soon, that time is going fast. That's quite the list there. I mean, Spear is relatively short, if you mean spear and not spear cuts the spear cuts through water. Yiddish Policeman's Union is a wonderful book. I've read it numerous times, and it is really, really good in lots of interesting ways. It is also sadly relevant what with politics these days, which is something you may not expect from this kind of book. But it does, same as Cahokia Jazz, is that it does lean real hard into like the hard-boiled noir styling. So just as a heads up, like it's a beautiful book, but if you're not in the mood for like some heavy Raymond Chandlering, it can get obnoxious. Oh yeah, that spear is relatively short. It's also incredibly good, but what I'm interested, looking forward to, is that apparently one of Nicola Griffith's older science fiction trilogies is getting a re-release next year in 2025, including finally audiobooks, which is something that makes me very happy. I'm very much looking forward to that. It is, not something that is, a 2025 publication, but a re-release. But hey, it is still something to look forward to read in 2025. If you love noir, then you will be very happy with the Yiddish Policeman's Union. You may also have to deal with a main character who is at least somewhat an alcoholic. But then again, it's noir, so that's kind of part of the point there. And now it's as I said, like I'm trying to figure out sort of like what kind of books I'm going to read next year, and I don't do TBRs, of course, because I'm way too inconsistent to do that. But I usually try to build sort of like a rough skeleton of books where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to read those when on publication day or as close to publication as possible, and then I'll figure out what to do around those. And I've got like 7 of them at the moment, and I want to maybe have like one per month would be neat, but yeah, alcoholics and noir. I know it's hard to believe. Um, what's interesting is that Umberto Eco was like a huge fan of like noir and hard-boiled detective stories, and used them for like a lot of his philosophy work as well. I mean, obviously, he kind of goes back and uses tropes from it and elements of it to write stuff like Name of the Rose or Foucault's Pendulum and stuff like that. But he also used it like in theoretical texts, analyzing scenes from different like Mickey Spillane and stuff like that, which is more on the violent side from your Chandler. So I'm trying to build this sort of like rough skeleton, rough outline of books I'm going to read next year that I have to get through. Oh yeah, yeah. He wrote like a relatively long essay on like the on Superman. That is one of his earlier semiotic like essays is on Superman. Echo is like in general, Echo is a really interesting sort of like theoretician in a lot of ways, and I highly recommend for like a better understanding of how to do sort of like literary theory, maybe in some ways at least. There's a relatively short one called Six Walks in the Fictional Woods, which is basically the written version or print version of his. He gave like 6 lectures on literature and stuff. I keep forgetting. It's one of those famous, not in Harvard, but in one of those like important universities, one of those like famous sort of like guest lecture things, and it got uh, released as Six Walks in the Fictional Woods, and I think it's a really interesting book to read if you want to figure out or like think about what we do when we do booktube stuff and talk about books in a lot of ways. Like it's a really interesting. It's relatively short, and each of those lectures looks at like a different part of like how to write, or not how to write, but like more like how to talk about literature. And he has this idea that a text is that's why he calls it the fictional woods. Like a text is like a wood, it's like a forest, and there are different paths through the forest. Interpretations or readings of a text are these paths through the forest. And there's the very straightforward one that you just go through from like follow the plot from point one point starting point to the end point, and then there's other ways where you can go and basically smaller paths where you can walk around the main plot and look at stuff and admire the scenery, and there's all these different ways to read a text. And the point, though, is that while there are paths in the forest, there's also still a way of getting lost, which is Echo's way of saying that, obviously readers can do whatever the fuck they want with the text, death of the author and all of that, but there are still sort of objective conditions to say this is a misreading. This is where you actually got lost in the text. This is still possible, which is where he used this metaphor of the forest, which I think is a really really clever one to use, or because it is a very easy to grasp kind of metaphor. It's like, yeah, you can read text through all these different lenses and do all of this stuff with it, and that's all well and good, but there still are situations where we can go, yeah, no, you have misread this book. This is not what this book is saying. And then the question is this like a failure of the author, or is it a failure of the reader? And that kind of stuff in those lectures. So hey Amanda, how you doing? Well, I mean, if you're that tired from work, then you needed the sleep, and I'm glad you got it. So yeah, Six Walks in the Fictional Woods by Umberto Eco. If you want to have like a quick introduction to one way of doing literary criticism and semiotics, which is a nice thing. I still need to finish that collection of essays about Eco. That is really an interesting one. It's Advances in Semiotics by Roberto Capozzi. He's like the editor of the thing, and it's reading Eco, and it has like a collection of essays by Umberto Eco, and then it has a couple of essays on Umberto Eco's theories and work in general, and then it has a section each on the 3 novels that were out at the time. I think it's 3, might be 4. No, three. It's one section of essays on the name of the rose, and one on Foucault's pendulum, and one on the island of the day before. Is that the English title? I think it's Island of the Day Before, and it has like a collection of essays each on those, trying to explain how Umberto Eco's philosophy and semiotics and theory is carried on in the books that he's writing. Yeah, that's the difference there. The Kale is ahead of us by, well, 10 hours or something like that, I guess. Yeah, 10 hours, which is impressive. So yeah, and that's like an interesting thing with Umberto Eco, right? That he deliberately used his fiction in a lot of ways as an extension of his philosophical work. Famously, there's an epigraph in Name of the Rose. It's like where philosophy ends, we need to narrativize, or something like that. I don't know the exact one. It's like basically there are things we can't say in theoretic language, but we need fiction to explore these topics, and that's basically what he does with Name of the Rose and Foucault's Pendulum, and the Island of the Day Before, and whatever came after that. So it's an interesting one. That's good to know, Kale. That is very good to know. Yeah, I mean that's like yeah, you're right there. It was a bit like that. But he was also, obviously in contact with other authors at the time in a lot of ways, and looking the idea that you can use fiction as a way of exploring the world, that it's more than just entertainment, I think is one that I very much believe. And that's certainly something that Echo does in a way where it's relatively easy to point at when people go, look, no, you're putting too much into this. This is just a crime novel about monks. No, there's more, and here's why that is the case. It makes it easier to do that because it's than with some other books, I guess. Like and as I like he was good friends and correspondent with Italo Calvino, obviously, and some of Calvino's books are dedicated to Umberto Eco and the other way around. So there's some overlap there in that part of what you might call postmodern literature and postmodernism in a lot of ways. Although, well, Eco is certainly postmodern in some ways, he's also constantly, arguing against, or at least in some form of discourse with, people like Roland Barthes and so forth. So yeah, definitely highly recommend reading that Six Walks in the Fictional Woods. I think it's like a really good and quick introduction to his like thoughts on literature. And unlike some of his, other works, it is not as heavy on semiotic terminology. So it's something I think is accessible for people who are not, spent years trying to understand really dense philosophy. Certainly the kind of stuff that I usually feel may be helpful for, for those of us on BookTube who sometimes try to do more than tell people that there is good character work and a brilliant magic system in this book. Because that's like one of those things that why I, sometimes read non-fiction about fiction, is that as someone who has not studied literary criticism or anything of the sorts, right? Literary theory, but I feel like it is helpful to know what I'm doing, and that's why I read those books by Eco, and I read stuff by on fantasy in particular. The Rhetorics of Fantasy by Farah Mendelssohn, for example, I think is a not necessarily one I agree with all the time, but certainly one that I think is pretty good. And there's a bunch of like people that do that kind of theory work on fantasy, and I'm yeah, you know, using those from time to time. So yeah, shall we try to be productive and do writing, responding to comments, and all these other things that I pretend to do when I say we're doing sprints? How does that sound? And we could be back around, let's say 10 past the hour. How does that sound? And I am back. How did you all do? I did, in fact, manage to do some, emails and other stuff. So I guess I feel relatively good. I also made new tea, which is, also important. I also listened to another lecture from Gresham College, which is one of those really, really interesting YouTube channels that I can highly recommend. They're like they have a really cool YouTube channel where they put on like lots of lectures that very distinguished academics give in London in public and like public lectures, and they're all archived on the channel. And my favorite witchcraft professor, Ronald Hutton, has a lot of lectures on different parts of neo-paganism, paganism, folklore, that kind of stuff. But there's all kinds of really interesting lectures on all kinds of subjects, including climate science, computer science, medicine, whatever you want. There's probably something on it there, including literary theory and so forth. And there was a lecture from earlier this week on Plato's cave and climate change, which is really cool because I personally really appreciate the idea of taking something supposedly as overcome and old as Plato's texts, philosophy, and applying that to contemporary problems in a way that goes beyond just the cave metaphor, right? Because everyone knows the cave thing and everyone gets it wrong, and that's fine. But having like serious academics talk about what we can do with this today and how we can maybe take something from it, both for like how we talk about topics like climate change, but also how we can apply these ideas still in our daily life, I think is a good thing, especially with a subject like philosophy, where we often or literature, where we often get these, especially from like the more STEM science side of things, or people that are well, not necessarily like really good, scientists kind of have a different approach to that, but like people that are supposedly in favor of only science and truth and so forth, and they're going like, well, this is old, this is like 2,000 years old, why would we care about this? And it's like, yeah, because it does still matter, because it does in fact help us understand the human condition and can help us express our situation in all kinds of ways, which goes back to the thing that I said earlier about Umberto Eco and the idea that sometimes when we can't philosophize something, we need to narrativize it. And looking at classical Greek philosophy and seeing how we can use it today beyond just the stupid stoic bros, the stoicism bros on the internet, I think is a good thing. We can't just leave those things to well, the proto-fascists. Let me put it this way. Right, now I can see you all again. So yeah, that's kind of what I did. I finally got around to doing the other thing that I said I would do yesterday, and then I kind of got distracted because that's just who I am. And that was, of course, finally editing the video description for my BookTube Joy and Gratitude tag video to add the info and link to a book chat with Pat's channel, the original creator, because I forgot that in the original one for reasons of me being me. And yeah, that's what I would call progress. Oh, and I've almost reached 1,450 subscribers, which is nice. I'm at 1,449. Round numbers are cool. When the year started, I was like, hey, maybe I can reach 1,500 this year, and seems that is not going to happen unless I manage to do something really insane, like put out the Mormonism video, and it will in fact give me new subscribers. But yeah. And so yeah, I guess I'll have to live with 1,450, which would mean I have gained all of 200 subscribers in 1 year. I guess I'm the slowest growing BookTube channel out there. So yeah, that's me trying to come to terms with the. It's one of those things that I always stumble upon, stumble over, is like, on the one hand, I know that thinking about it, like numbers and growth and all that stuff is incredibly frustrating, especially if I want to do the things I want to do, and I want to do them the way I want to do them, because there's I know that my approach to doing stuff on BookTube is not exactly going to make me very popular. Same way that my lack of social skills is certainly not helping with building community within other, within BookTube, with other BookTubers and all of that stuff. So that is, highly frustrating sometimes. But on the other hand, I'd rather, do the things I want to do, and not wonder about getting invited to collaborations or anything of the sorts, or having like rapid growth, because that's just not going to happen. And so I'm, always trying to overcome these things. But near the end of the year, it's always, everyone is doing their best videos, best of the year videos and collabs, like the best, the best books of 2024 according to my favorite booktubers, best books to look forward to in 2025 according to my friends and my favorite booktubers, and everyone shows up in these videos. I already stopped watching them because on the one hand, yeah, I'm definitely interested in like what people are reading, and on the other hand, yeah, every time I see one of those, I'm like, yeah, well, didn't get invited or asked for this one either. And yes, I know I am. Britain you have asked me to get you this thing by tomorrow, and I will. The problem is you asked for something with music, and that's hard for me. And so I just, because it's really hard for me to pick. I mean, maybe the problem is also that I'm a heavy metal person, and as you may know or may not know, heavy metal is full of fantasy stuff. So I had to figure out how to do that as well, and come up with the correct, or not the correct, but an interesting pick when it comes to music, because do I pick a summoning album? Do I pick a Blind Guardian album, which is probably the easiest one, but probably also the one that most people will pick in case other people that you have asked are actually into heavy metal. Because, if you have a band that does an entire concept album just on the Noldor in the Silmarillion, then chances are fantasy fans are going to find that album. There's of course Caliban Brood, which have like an entire album just about the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And yeah, fantasy and heavy metal and or hard rock go back so far, like all the way to like the early 70s, when people like Frank Frazetta did cover artworks for rock bands and cover artworks for Conan, and those often overlap in all kinds of ways. So there is, yeah, it's hard for me to decide which one to take. Is, I guess, what I would say. So yeah, that's something I was struggling with, but the video will definitely be done today or tomorrow morning, so I can send it to you in time. I've read your message. But yeah, so I guess it's just like the whole like end of the year feeling where you're like, it's all kind of fucked up, and I don't get anything done, and I could have been like, I could have reached goals this year and I didn't, and I guess I'll always feel that way. And it's just like, I mean, I feel that probably most people feel that way at some point in their lives. Like, you know, I guess most of us do have goals that are, somewhere above what we can actually achieve. Because if you set like a goal for the end of the year, years are long, and there's so much shit going down in one year. Chances are very high that you will not be able to actually achieve them, and that is completely out of your control. It's like going like, I can, you know, for example, for me, like I said, like, yeah, reaching 1,500 subscribers by the end of the year would be neat. And then my cameras both broke down, and I couldn't make videos for like 2 months. And that certainly impacted like how the channel grew, and that's not something I knew beforehand, right? And that's kind of sort of like part of like the whole like end of the year blues, I guess, in a lot of ways, where I'm like, yeah, could have been better. And yeah, I'm trying to overcome that. We'll see how that goes. Uh, I I will still try to get the Mormonism video done by the end of the year. That would probably help me feel less bad, or less, I can see this, less powerless, I guess, less like a failure, I guess. And no, that's, there's a lot of toxic thoughts going into that, right? And I'm aware of that. But for me, I feel finishing things is sort of like a way where I can show to myself that I am able to do anything. It's a way of demonstrating that I still have some form of agency in this world. You know what I mean? And failing at that does have like a massive impact, because so much sort of like self-image, self-worth, whatever you want to call it, kind of hinges on that. Which I think is part of the problem that I have with, oh, no problem, which is why a lot of and I really appreciate everyone going like, well, take your time with this. You don't need to have it out now or whatever. I totally appreciate that, but I guess my mistake was to hang so much personal stuff on this, or on the hang so much self-worth on it. That's certainly on me. And yeah, this is where we are now, where I'm trying to figure this out. Same, of course, with the whole like writing project. It's like at least finishing the first sort of chapter thing by the end of the year would be neat. But will I be able to do that? Who knows? And how do I deal with potential failure, or whatever you want to call it? Will I just do nothing and just keep on keeping on, or will there be consequences? It's a weird day, is what I'm saying. Also really need to figure out how to do the rest of the year stuff, visit family, all of that, those things, because those will definitely cut into what I can do, right? I won't be able to finish the Mormonism video while visiting family. That's just not in it. So either I finish it before I leave on the 23rd, or I'll have to come back before the end of the year and get shit done. But if I'm also doing the Redwall stuff at the same time, how many videos can I do per day? It's all just a bit hazy at the moment, and I'm trying to figure out why that is the case. And but yeah, probably just also like winter, lack of light and shit like that. At least the whole gym thing is going well. So at least having like 1 year of going to the gym every day that I could and wasn't sick or anything, and not dropping out again, seems like an achievement. And I mean, I've almost lost 15 kilos this year, which is that's pretty fucking impressive. That's an entire crate of beers, weight wise. And it's interesting for me, like if you externalize this idea, it's like, well, I know how much this weighs if I carry a full box of beers. Generally, having 20 bottles of like half a liter, it's roughly 15 kilos. I'm like, yeah, I just like at the beginning of the year, I was carrying that weight around with me all the time, and now it's gone. That makes life in general just easier, despite just gaining stamina and everything by working out all the time. So at least that I guess. You know. But anyway, I'm gonna try to finish that second Mistborn book today. See how that goes. I mean, I know how it ends, so it's not that big of a surprise anywhere. But at least I completely forgot there's one plot line in the second Mistborn novel that made it very clear why Brandon Sanderson was picked to finish The Wheel of Time, and it has nothing to do with that wonderful obituary he wrote for Robert Jordan. It has everything to do with the fact that he also has a very weird humiliation kink plot line in there, where a very strong and powerful woman is disciplining young boys, and I'm like, yeah, or younger men, and I'm like, I guess, you know, I guess you're kindred spirits in that regard. Fine, write the book. So yeah, I don't know. No. So yeah, I guess the question is, let's do the sprinting thing again and finish the sprinting thing. How about that? So I would start now, and we'll do another 15 minutes. And not 15, like 45 minutes. So I'll be done by 10:15 my time. And I'll see you in 45, I guess. And I am back. How did you guys do? I did, in fact, manage to do some writing. Isn't that brilliant? I mean, unexpected for sure. But it's, nice to actually do the thing that I plan to do for once. I did, of course, not write enough, but, every word counts, and I did, in fact, get some words down. And I am getting close to where I think everything has happened that should happen in this. Hey, Ida. And yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful chair. It's no, it's not. It's actually falling apart, and I will probably need to get a new office chair relatively soon. So we'll see. But yeah, I managed to get like the next sort of important thing down in this chapter, and now all that's left is to write about a a village feast, and then we're done. So I guess coming up with foodstuffs or researching traditional 16th century food, which I assume is just bread, at least in Eastern Germany. No, it's so I can see the whole thing coming to a close, and then I'll read through it once and see if there are like huge shifts in like language, style, tone, whatever. Because I've been typing this out over the last 3-4 weeks or whatever, so I'm doing um, there's a good chance I have obviously shifted you know what I was writing, simply by virtue of me reading all kinds of different books with like very different styles. And I was like, how does that impact how I use language? And that's kind of what I'll do, and then I'll try to hand it out to some very selected people for a very first impression, and then I'll just I don't know, die of anxiety while they're reading it. How are you doing, Ida? Yeah, maybe that'll happen. I have heard of such things. I try not to wake up at 3 a.m. Usually I go to bed at 3 a.m., which is probably the wrong approach, I guess. But yeah. So yeah, hope you're having a good day so far. And I did get stuff done already, but I'll you know pack my shit and go to the gym and probably torture my body a bit more, and we'll see how that works. I'll also listen to some more of The Well of Ascension, and that is torture enough, I think. It's not a good book. I I think it also kind of suffers, probably, I would argue, from the whole like middle book syndrome in a lot of ways, where the Final Empire, uh, despite all its flaws, and there's a lot of them, does have like a fairly tight plot, I guess, and that leaves not enough sort of like ongoing things for the second book. He has to set up like new threats and new problems and all of that stuff, and there's very little unresolved shit going on at the end of the first book. And so you got to do like the whole like reintroducing everybody, setting up a new threat, and taking way more time about it, because of course you'd need like more time for it at this point, because there's always feature creep in epic fantasy. I feel like when you write the first book and everything is fine, and the second book suddenly becomes like much larger, and the third book either much larger or shorter again, depending on how well you structure that thing. That sucks, Ida. I'm very sorry. Parking fines, not a good thing. We don't approve of those. At least I don't. Um, yeah, so I guess I'll try to finish that second Mistborn book today, and we'll see how I feel about finally getting to that Metal from Heaven review video, whatever you want to call it, discussion video, because I don't know if I actually need to finish the entire Mistborn trilogy. I feel like most of it is sort of based on, or not based on, but like most of the things I want to like point out in the Metal from Heaven video compared to Mistborn as a book that has some similarities, right? Um, happens in the first Mistborn novel, so I don't know if I need to finish the third one yet. Maybe I just need to save my sanity. Yeah, okay, in that case, I would argue it's probably it could have been much worse by now. Yeah, so that's what I'll try to do. I mean, try to finish Mistborn thing today, try to record videos, try to get shit done the rest of the day, which is kind of difficult. We'll see. And hopefully I don't actually have like a full-on cold and it was just like, the morning thing, and we'll see how I feel later today. Mistborn is very accessible. It moves very fast. It has very little else to offer. It does have sort of like a heist kind of structure in some regard, but because it's Sanderson at the end, it's still all solved through violence. I think that's at least the plot of the first novel is all solved through violence at the end of the day, because he's too much in love with this specific magic system and combat system, and he's like, yeah, look at how I can write about this and so forth. So I guess compared to starting with, say, Stormlight Archives, it's much less of a commitment. So I guess the Final Empire might be a good start, because also it does not it is fairly standalone-ish. Yes, it kind of sets up with like a final sort of cliffhanger scene that but it's one that you can like completely ignore if you don't feel like it. It's more like, you don't know what you have done, and then you're like, well, maybe I don't care that much. So I think probably an easy first Sanderson, I would argue. Is it a good one? Probably not. But then again, I think like I personally enjoyed, or not enjoy, but like I think Elantris is a better novel, or at least a more interesting novel. But that's just like my take. And since I'm usually wrong when it comes to booktube things, or everyone else believes a different thing, I'm not sure if I want to recommend my approach to this. All right. Let's actually get this all figured out, and I will leave you all to this wonderful Thursday, and we'll do one final one tomorrow. And I don't know if there will be sprints on Monday the 23rd. That kind of depends on like when I will be traveling where and all of that stuff. Something to find out over the weekend, I guess. So once again, thanks for hanging out. I do very much appreciate